Hey all. This is 6path Weeb, welcome back to my anime fanfic channel. Today, we're diving into part 2 of an epic alternate universe story. Naruko gets predator stealth and weapons. What happens when the Kunoichi of Konoha gets her hands on alien tech made for the ultimate hunter? Stick around to find out. Disclaimer, this content is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage or characters used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's jump back into the world of chakra, stealth tech, and fierce showdowns. Let the fanfic begin. Tsunade was greatly relieved to see that Hinata had returned safely to Konoha. She had received reports that the mysterious figure known as the Phantom Shinobi Collector had been near the young girl for over a minute. It was perplexing to hear that this individual, based on Hinata's description, had actually rescued her from Mizuki. Although Mizuki's end was fitting in light of his betrayal and past actions against the Leaf Village and Naruko, the fact that the stranger helped Hinata was an unexpected twist. Thank you for bringing this report to me promptly, Neji. You as well, Hinata. Because of your efforts, we now have a clear description of this individual, which will make it significantly harder for him to remain hidden, Tsunade said. She immediately ordered the description to be documented in the bingo book, complete with a visual sketch to aid in identification. It was our duty, Lady Hokage, but there is something still weighing on my mind, and I felt it important to share, said Hinata, glancing at Tsunade, who raised an inquisitive brow, and then at Neji, who appeared equally curious. What exactly is concerning you, Lady Hinata? Neji asked, sensing that her concern was likely connected to their recent encounter. To be honest, Neji-Niazan, I can't fully explain it. When the mysterious figure confronted Mizuki, he departed quickly after your arrival. But before leaving, he said something strange. He remarked on how much we had both grown. It felt as though he knew us. Like from another life, Hinata explained, her voice soft with confusion. I don't recall anyone fitting that description during our childhood or training years, Neji replied, thoughtfully, while Hinata nodded in agreement. Even Tsunade seemed momentarily puzzled. Even so, this could be an important lead regarding his identity. I suggest you both take some time to rest while we look further into it. Your safe return is a blessing, and perhaps in time, we may bring this mysterious person to justice, said Tsunade kindly, dismissing them with a nod. After the two left, Jiraiya appeared at the window, his expression serious. Even if we do manage to stop him eventually, there's a good chance more people might be affected before then. It's only going to get more complicated. That's exactly why I sent you to find Naruko, to train her and protect her from dangers like this, Tsunade exclaimed, her voice filled with frustration. Her desk nearly bore the brunt of her irritation, especially after Jiraiya had earlier admitted he was unable to locate the spirited Kunoichi. I know, Tsunade Heim. I've searched everywhere. I've done all I could think of, and still, I couldn't find her. And honestly, I regret not doing more for her when she was growing up in the village. She deserved our guidance and protection, Jiraiya said, guilt lacing his words. Tsunade flinched at that, knowing deep down they had both fallen short in their roles as her guardians. Wherever she is, I only hope Naruko is getting stronger. And staying far away from this kind of trouble, Tsunade said quietly, sinking into her chair and gazing at the Hokage monument outside her window. The village had never quite felt the same since Naruko left. The light she brought with her presence had dimmed, leaving an emptiness that was impossible to ignore. You and me both, Tsunade. You and me both, Jiraiya murmured before slipping away the same way he had entered, determined to continue his search for Naruko. Ichiraku Ramen Stand, 2 days later. I miss Naruko, Choji admitted as he slowly ate his ramen. Meals had been less exciting ever since she left. There was no one to challenge him in eating contests, at least outside his own clan. Yeah. I never thought I'd say this, but it's more bothersome not having Naruko around than when she was pulling her usual pranks. I actually miss seeing her mischief everywhere, Shikamaru added, joining his friend at the counter. Without her, the village felt quieter, too quiet. Hey, did you guys hear? Hinata and Neji ran into that mysterious shinobi. Ino announced as she entered the ramen stand, capturing their attention. They did? Are they alright? Shikamaru asked, concerned given the eerie rumors surrounding the figure. Yeah, they're okay. Thank goodness, right? Apparently, Hinata encountered Mizuki after he escaped from confinement, and the mystery person stopped him before he could do anything harmful, Ino explained, grateful for the outcome. That's a relief. But it's odd, isn't it? Why would someone like that help them, and then just leave without a trace? Shikamaru said, deep in thought. Maybe he doesn't hurt women. Who knows? Ino replied casually, ordering a bowl of ramen for herself. Doesn't hurt women? That's it. Ino, you might have just hit on something, even if you do say some questionable things, Shikamaru said, suddenly leaping from his seat and running off to follow a lead. Wait, what do you mean questionable? Get back here, Shikamaru, and I'll show you what a clever blonde can do, Ino shouted after him, realizing too late that she may have just insulted herself. Hokage Tower, 3 days later. Are you absolutely certain this information is accurate? Tsunade asked, her eyes scanning the report as Shikamaru and Shino stood before her. The findings were unusual and intriguing. We verified everything twice, Hokage-sama, Shino replied calmly. According to the data we've compiled, this individual has not targeted any female shinobi during these so-called incidents. Statistically, fewer women become shinobi, and even fewer abandon their villages. If we deploy a team composed entirely of female shinobi, there's a good chance we could subdue this individual, or at the very least, force a retreat. Tsunade considered the idea carefully, weighing the risks. I dislike sending any shinobi into a situation like this, especially with such specific criteria, but you may have a point. I'll begin selecting a suitable team for the mission. She knew this wouldn't go over easily with the council, or with many of the female shinobi in the village, who were understandably uneasy about the mysterious figure's actions. Still, she had to act based on logic and not fear. Thank you, Hokage-sama. On a different note, has there been any word from Uzumaki Naruko? Any sign she'll be returning soon? Shino asked, his tone softening. His teammate missed the blonde kunoichi deeply, and truthfully, so did he. Tsunade's expression grew solemn. I'm sorry, Shino. I haven't been able to bring Naruko back yet. The fire daimyo has been overwhelmed with responsibilities and hasn't been able to review the request to lift the banishment. She didn't reveal the full truth, that Naruko had been unreachable for nearly 3 years, with no signs of her whereabouts. No letters. No clues. I understand, Hokage-sama. I'll inform my teammates, Shino said with a bow before he turned and left the room, leaving Shikamaru alone with Tsunade. You waited until Shino left because there's something else you want to say, isn't there? Tsunade asked, raising an eyebrow as she noticed Shikamaru fidget, scratching the back of his head, a nervous habit he had inherited from his father. Yeah. And I know it's going to sound strange, maybe even ridiculous, he admitted. But I think there's a pattern we haven't considered, or maybe one you've deliberately ignored. Tsunade narrowed her eyes, sensing where this was going. Be very careful with your next words, Shikamaru. Right, he muttered. I'll just come out with it. Based on everything we've gathered, and comparing timelines, I think there's a possibility this individual might be Naruko. Tsunade's eyes widened in shock, and then, just as Shikamaru expected, she sent him flying out of the room with one swift punch. That boy has some nerve. She thought as she sat down, trying to contain the frustration boiling within her. Naruko would never become something like that. She's too kind-hearted. Too full of life. Yet, despite the anger and disbelief, a shadow of doubt crept into her thoughts. The timing. The disappearances. The emergence of this mysterious threat after Naruko vanished. It was difficult to ignore. Tsunade closed her eyes and took a deep breath, offering a quiet prayer that Shikamaru's theory was wrong. But deep down, a part of her couldn't help but worry. She called for Shizune and instructed her to assemble a select team of female shinobi for a special assignment, one that none of them would be pleased about. Rice Country, Sound Village, 4 days later. Orochimaru was growing increasingly frustrated. Ever since the plan to acquire the Uchiha had failed, his mood had only worsened. Even Kabuto had to approach the Sannin with the utmost care. It had been 3 years since Orochimaru had transferred into a new body, and the time for another transition was drawing dangerously close. Orochimaru-sama, the vessel you requested is ready, Kabuto informed him cautiously, hoping this would bring some satisfaction, though he knew it wasn't the vessel Orochimaru had originally desired. Very well. I must proceed immediately or all progress will be for nothing, Orochimaru said, his tone serious as he made his way to the specially prepared chamber for the ritual. However, what awaited them inside was far from expected. The chamber, which had been meticulously arranged for the transition, was in disarray. The vessel, once prepared for Orochimaru, was no longer intact, having been severely damaged beyond use. The scene left both Orochimaru and Kabuto stunned. This is a disaster. There are no other viable vessels in the Sound Village, thought Kabuto anxiously, glancing at Orochimaru, whose displeasure was rapidly intensifying. You have some explaining to do, Kabuto, Orochimaru said coldly, suspecting sabotage at the worst possible moment. Oh Orochimaru-sama, I swear I had nothing to do with this. Kabuto replied nervously, sensing the seriousness of the situation. If not you, then who? Orochimaru demanded. Before an answer could be given, Orochimaru suddenly sensed a powerful energy behind him and leapt aside. A burst of red chakra surged past him and struck Kabuto in the chest, knocking him back with intense force. Orochimaru turned in shock, realizing someone else had entered the room. A voice rang out from the shadows. Orochimaru of the Sannin, you've attracted quite the attention. Let's see if you're as formidable as they say. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes and glanced toward the door, but his path was blocked by shimmering red energy beams forming a grid. He turned back to see a masked figure step into view, wielding a double-ended spear-like weapon with precision and confidence. Realizing this individual was no ordinary opponent, Orochimaru knew he had to take this seriously. Drawing on his experimental powers, he shifted into his true form, a towering serpent-like creature made of countless smaller serpents, a result of his years of self-experimentation. The masked figure responded by drawing a set of advanced tools, a pair of sleek wrist blades and a spinning disc-like weapon. Both opponents prepared for battle, their eyes locked with intense focus. Orochimaru struck first, lunging with incredible speed. The masked warrior dodged skillfully, releasing the disc, which flew with expert precision and sliced through Orochimaru's extended form. Though briefly separated, Orochimaru quickly reconnected the severed halves of his body. Unfazed, the masked figure stowed the disc and brandished his spear. Orochimaru attacked again, feinting left before weaving right, then launched forward in an attempt to trap his opponent. Wrapping his elongated form around the figure, he grinned, thinking he had gained the upper hand. However, the victory was short-lived. A sharp impact struck Orochimaru's head. The spear that had been discarded earlier had returned, revealed now to be a clever transformation. In a surprising turn, the masked opponent had used a shadow clone to distract Orochimaru while the real version delivered a decisive blow with the genuine spear. Staggered, Orochimaru tried to retaliate, swinging his tail to strike the warrior and once again wrapping around them. But the figure was prepared. Pulling out a small canister glowing with blue energy, the masked hunter deflected Orochimaru's sword with his wrist blade. Time for a new taste, said the masked warrior calmly, tossing the canister into Orochimaru's open mouth. The container broke on impact, releasing a concentrated solvent designed to weaken energy-based transformations. As the effects began to take hold, Orochimaru recoiled, and the masked hunter stepped back, ready for what would come next. Orochimaru's hideout. Orochimaru let out a cry as the special solvent began to neutralize his form, dissolving it until there was little trace of his presence left. The hunter stood silently, unmoving as the process finished. Although it went against his usual methods to leave without a token from his pursuit, he decided to explore the hidden lair in hopes of finding an item to serve as a meaningful memento of the battle. Konoha, Hokage Tower, 2 weeks later. Do you fully understand the assignment? If any of you wish to withdraw, now is the time to speak. You will not be judged for it, said Lady Tsunade, addressing the group of highly trained kunoichi standing before her. Each one came from a different background, but all were skilled in their own right. Before her stood Mitarashi Anko, Uzuki Yugao, Yuhi Kurenai, Inuzuka Hana, and Hyuga Hinata. These kunoichi had been chosen for one purpose, to track and detain a powerful rogue ninja. Although Hinata was not originally among the shinobi Tsunade had in mind, her unique abilities made her the most likely to hold her own against the elusive individual long enough for the mission to succeed. We understand, Lady Hokage. Our goal is to locate, subdue, and apprehend this target, preferably alive so we can uncover their identity, said Anko, her voice firm and curious. She was intrigued by this mysterious figure and wondered about his motivations, especially given reports that he had never harmed women. Correct, said Tsunade with a nod. But do not underestimate this individual. Those who have crossed paths with him have never returned. Stay alert. One misstep could end the mission. As the group exited the Hokage's office, 2 familiar faces waited for Hinata, Shino, and Kiba. Both of them looked concerned as they approached her. Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, what brings you here? Hinata asked softly, greeting her former teammates. We hoped you'd reconsider, said Kiba, his voice tinged with worry. The village wouldn't be the same if something happened to you. And Naruko might never know how you really feel. Hinata's face turned a slight shade of pink, but she stood strong, her expression resolute. I appreciate both of you coming. But I feel like I need to do this. Something deep inside me is telling me this mission is important, not just for the village, but for me personally. I feel like if I go through with it, I might finally see Naruko again and tell her how I truly feel. Though unlikely, stranger things have occurred recently, said Shino with a nod. I sincerely hope that you return safely, Hinata-san. Yeah, what he said, added Kiba, giving her a quick, supportive hug. And if you do see Naruko, tell her I still want a rematch. And I'm not going to lose this time. Somewhere in the forest, land of fire, 1 week later the figure known throughout the shinobi world as the Phantom Hunter moved swiftly from branch to branch, pausing mid-leap as the sound of conversation reached her ears. Landing quietly on a high branch, the hunter looked down to see two familiar individuals walking through the forest in calm conversation. It was Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigaki Kisame, both high-ranking members of the Akatsuki organization. The hunter's eyes sparkled behind her mask. It had been a long time since she had encountered such experienced targets, and this was an opportunity not to be missed. These two were no ordinary shinobi. Their strength and skill would make this encounter a challenge worth remembering. Hey Itachi. You feel that? Kisame said quietly, his voice low but alert. Yes. We're being watched. Above us, Itachi responded calmly. Be prepared. There's a reason this individual is feared across all villages. Yeah, I know. The stories give me chills, and that's saying something coming from me, replied Kisame, adjusting his stance slightly. Before another word could be exchanged, a figure landed before them with quiet power, standing just a short distance away. The hunter's mask caught the light for a moment, revealing glowing red eyes that briefly flickered with energy. Kisame could see why their leader, Pain, had shown interest in recruiting this person. There was a commanding presence about her, both intense and enigmatic. As for Itachi, his eyes narrowed, studying the figure. The mask rendered the Sharingan ineffective, and there was no available data on her combat techniques. She was a complete unknown. An enigma. Greetings, Spirit of the Hidden Leaf, said Itachi respectfully. We represent the Akatsuki organization and would like to extend an invitation on behalf of our leader. Your abilities are impressive, and we believe they could be put to meaningful use within our ranks. Will you consider joining us? The masked figure tilted her head to one side, then the other, emitting a low growl-like hum beneath her mask. No, thank you, she replied simply before vanishing from sight. Well, at least we can tell Leader Sama we gave it a genuine effort, Kisame remarked as he unsheathed his sword. Itachi remained still, waiting calmly for the mysterious shinobi to make the next move. A faint whirling sound caught Itachi's attention. He turned swiftly, just in time to see a pair of spinning discs racing toward him. He leapt aside, joined by Kisame, and the projectiles flew past harmlessly. But that had only been a diversion. A sharp thump drew Kisame's focus just in time to avoid a spear-like weapon aimed in his direction. His honed instincts from years of experience had just barely kept him safe. Itachi countered with a fire-style technique, but the target had already relocated, seeking better ground. Kisame prepared his blade again, tuning into his senses to detect their elusive opponent. A noise behind him triggered a rapid swing of his weapon, but he struck only a tree trunk. She's fast, he muttered. Then, from above, the mysterious shinobi descended silently, landing behind him with precision. Her twin wrist blades extended to their full reach, only for Kisame's body to dissolve into a splash of water. Gotcha, Kisame exclaimed, appearing above and bringing down his sword with force, slicing through the target, only for the figure to vanish in a puff of smoke. A shadow clone, Itachi murmured, eyes narrowing. Before Kisame could react to the trickery, the real figure appeared above and launched a focused beam of crimson energy directly at him, striking him in the chest. This time, the result was not an illusion. Kisame fell, the impact having clearly overpowered him. Itachi watched in disbelief. The unique chakra energy, unmistakably connected to the Nine Tails, was unmistakable. Using his Sharingan, he confirmed what he feared. This was the chakra of the one thought to have vanished from the world, Naruko Uzumaki. He turned to retreat, planning to report everything to the leader, but another pair of spinning discs whirled past him, forcing him to dodge. A strange spear struck a tree near him, and he leapt back, drawing a sword and kunai, activating his Sharingan. Surprise! Came a distorted version of Kisame's voice, and Itachi spun away just in time to avoid a powerful strike from above. Amaterasu! He called out, invoking his special technique. The dark flame surged forward, enveloping the figure. Panting, eyes strained, Itachi allowed himself a brief moment of relief. His vision wavered as the strain took its toll. Hey, Itachi! called a warped voice, eerily familiar to Kisame's. He turned in time to see Naruko, disguised once again, strike with her wrist blades. Itachi gasped, stunned by her precision and the mastery she had over her abilities. This can't be, he thought, weakened from the encounter, unable to continue. Naruko stood tall, calm and steady, retrieving 2 symbolic items, rings once worn by the fallen members, adding them to her collection with quiet respect. 2 completed missions. 2 more reminders of what I've overcome, she said gently, walking away into the shadows. Elsewhere, 4 days later. Were you able to follow his trail from the spot where Hinata encountered him? Asked Anko, observing as Hana relied on her Inuzuka tracking abilities to trace the masked figure. They had followed the elusive individual to this location after pursuing leads for days. Yes. It's strange though, his scent is everywhere, and yet it's still fresh. No more than a few minutes old at most, replied Hana. The group had been following this trail for some time and were finally making progress. Stay alert. If he's nearby, then he's likely aware that we're tracking him, warned Yugao, preparing for any potential confrontation as Hinata activated her Byakugan once again, scanning the surroundings. I will get through this mission. And when I do, I'll tell Naruko how I truly feel, thought Hinata, focusing all her attention on detecting even the slightest sign of their mysterious opponent. Carefully, the group of kunoichi advanced through the area, moving cautiously in search of their target. They were certain he was near, and possibly watching, waiting for the perfect moment to act. They're courageous, but it might not be enough, said a low voice, as the masked figure observed them from a high perch among the trees, his eyes glowing ominously from beneath the hood. He's close. I can feel intense pressure building around us, said Anko, causing the group to tighten their formation defensively. Suddenly, the masked figure sprang from above, landing gracefully in the center of their circle. He launched a flurry of swift taijutsu strikes that seemed impossible to track. Anko attempted to counter with her hidden shadow snake technique, but he effortlessly deflected it with his blade and spun, sending her flying back with a precise kick. Hana leapt onto his back, attempting to pin him with her claws, but the masked figure shrugged her off with remarkable strength. Kurenai tried to cast a genjutsu, but he resisted its effects, moving too swiftly for her illusions to bind him. Before Kurenai could react further, the figure struck her midsection and followed up with a forceful shove, sending her tumbling to the ground. Uzuki Yugao, armed with Hayate's old sword, managed to challenge the masked figure with her own considerable skill. The sound of clashing metal echoed as sparks flew. She was careful not to engage him with brute force, knowing he held the advantage there, and instead relied on agility and technique. But the masked hunter feinted left, swept her off her feet, and deftly disarmed her, examining the sword with a strange familiarity. This blade. It once belonged to Gecko Hayate, he said, studying it closely. So what? Replied Yugao, surprised he recognized the weapon and even more unsettled by his tone. I simply find it curious that you would try to stop me when, in truth, I was the one who brought justice to the one who wronged him, the masked figure said, driving the sword into a nearby tree with precision, the hilt vibrating against the bark. You expect me to thank you for that? Said Yugao sharply, noticing Hinata circling behind the figure, seemingly waiting for an opening. Perhaps not. But I honored a request once made by someone who knew the difference between strength and wisdom. Someone who protected me when no one else did, when others stood by in silence, he said cryptically. Hinata let out a soft gasp of recognition at his words. Before she could act, the masked figure appeared behind her in a blur, gently catching her as she fainted from the sudden motion. Hinata, Kurenai shouted, scrambling to her feet and charging toward the masked figure with a kunai, determined to protect her student. But the masked figure swiftly leapt back into the trees, Hinata still in his arms, vanishing into the canopy with practiced ease. A sense of calm confidence radiated from him, as if he had no fear of pursuit. It's been a long time since I caught the scent of lavender. I almost forgot what it smelled like, he murmured, before turning his attention back to the group now in pursuit. Release her now, Kurenai demanded, her voice unwavering. I will. Eventually. She and I have much to discuss, the figure responded coolly. With a flick of his wrist, a burst of chakra launched from a concealed mechanism, striking the base of a tree and sending it toppling toward the group to block their path. In moments, he and Hinata had disappeared. The kunoichi left behind felt a ripple of unease settle over them. One of their kindest and most gentle had been taken, and they were unsure where. Or why. The group of kunoichi from the Hidden Leaf village sprinted in pursuit of the masked stranger, using a mix of his trail and Hinata's lingering scent to track his unusual route through the forest. When they reached a branching point in the path where many trails spread out in different directions, Hana frowned with concern. Hinata's scent led in several directions at once, which was perplexing and shouldn't have been possible. With no clear answer, each kunoichi followed the path Hinata's trail suggested. As Kurenai ran along her chosen path, she silently hoped Hinata was safe. Her thoughts raced with strategies to confront the masked individual, but deep in her mind, a glimmer of hope remained. Despite having ample opportunity, this person had not harmed anyone. That detail gave her a sense of cautious optimism. Maybe he wasn't as dangerous as he appeared. If that's true, he might regret crossing me, thought Kurenai, her eyes narrowing as she finally spotted Hinata being carried by the unmasked figure. The mysterious figure paused on a tree branch, gently placing Hinata down before turning to face Kurenai. She met his gaze without flinching, her kunai ready in both hands. "Quite bold of you, Yuhi Kurenai. I thought the shinobi of the leaf preferred teamwork," the masked figure said with a teasing tone, watching Kurenai's determined stance. "Return Hinata now, or I'll show you just how skilled I am with these kunai," Kurenai warned calmly, assessing the situation and looking for the right moment to reach Hinata. "Is that so? Well, I hate to disappoint you, but I don't actually have Hinata with me. And neither do the other versions of myself your teammates are chasing," he replied cryptically. To Kurenai's shock, the figure beside him transformed into a clone and vanished in a puff of smoke, revealing that what she thought was Hinata had only been her jacket. "What?" she exclaimed, realization dawning on her. "You were brave to try, Yuhi Kurenai," the clone said before it, too, vanished into thin air. "But your efforts, unfortunately, were in vain. You and your allies will have to explain to your Hokage that someone precious to you has slipped away." Kurenai stood in stunned silence before falling to her knees, overcome by the weight of the moment and the disappearance of her cherished student. Unknown location, time unspecified. Hinata stirred from an unnatural sleep, her head heavy and her thoughts hazy. As she sat up slowly, she realized she was on a soft bed in a dimly lit room. Blinking to clear her vision, she checked herself over. Though she was missing her jacket and pants, her shirt, undergarments, and general appearance seemed untouched, which puzzled her. Carefully stepping onto the cool floor, she made her way toward the only opening in the room. The corridor outside was shadowy and narrow, lit only by occasional flickers of light. She gently ran her fingers along the textured walls, etched with strange symbols she didn't recognize, and moved forward cautiously. Eventually, the corridor led her to a wide circular chamber shrouded in a low mist. 4 large stone pillars with unfamiliar carving stood near the center. Along one wall, she saw an array of peculiar weapons, foreign and unlike anything she'd seen in the hidden leaf or beyond. Across the room, Hinata's breath caught as she spotted a wall adorned with various keepsakes. Beneath each artifact was a nameplate, alongside old forehead protectors from different villages. Some belonged to shinobi she recognized, people who had once wronged Naruko in the past and had quietly left the village under orders. Strangely, these individuals had never changed their ways, even after returning. While examining the wall of mysterious memorabilia, a soft growl echoed through the room, freezing Hinata in place. Slowly, she turned, and there stood the masked figure. Tall, silent, and imposing, the figure watched her from across the chamber, expression unreadable behind the mask. Though unarmed in appearance, his presence alone was enough to send chills down her spine. Despite her nervousness, Hinata stood her ground. Her heart pounded, but she had to know, was the person behind that mask who she thought it might be? Was it truly Naruko? The figure spoke at last, his voice calm and slightly amused. "Fascinated by the collection, are you?" he said, noting where her eyes had lingered. "They tell a story, though most never understand it at first glance." Hinata looked at him, unsure of what would come next, but resolute in her desire to uncover the truth, no matter how mysterious or confusing it might be. Small sample? Thought Hinata, remembering now that the bingo book described the masked figure before her as a highly skilled hunter nin known for tracking and capturing dangerous shinobi. Yet, on the walls were only a few decorative masks and tokens, nowhere near what the exaggerated rumors had painted. "Do you know why I spared you, Hyuga Hinata?" asked the masked hunter, noticing the young woman's anxious glances from the wall to her, clearly shaken. "And no," Hinata replied, though part of her suspected the reason, but she was hesitant to say it aloud, afraid of being wrong. "You're not being truthful," the masked figure replied, her tone gentle, almost amused. Hinata flinched at how easily the other had seen through her, her cheeks heating up as she stumbled through apologies. Father was right. I've never been very good at lying, Hinata thought, mentally scolding herself. I always try to be honest, even when it's hard. I always thought it was cute how you blushed, Hinata-chan, the masked hunter said, causing Hinata's eyes to widen in surprise. That voice, it was so familiar. And Naruko-san? Is that you? Hinata asked, hope flickering in her voice and eyes. I'll let you decide for yourself, Hinata-chan. Just know. You may not like what you see. And it's possible you might no longer feel the same way, the figure replied, slowly reaching for her mask. But before she could remove it, Hinata reached forward, gently holding her wrists. Let me be the judge of that, Naruko-san, Hinata said softly, her gaze steady and full of certainty. With a brief pause, the two of them removed the mask together. And there, before her, stood the person so many had spoken of with awe and fear, yet to Hinata, it was still Naruko. Her face had changed. It held a slightly more otherworldly, mystical quality, smoother in some ways, her features more defined. The familiar whisker-like markings on her cheeks had deepened, and her eyes were no longer the bright blue Hinata remembered, but a vivid red with an almost glowing quality. Her hair was a striking combination of red dreadlocks woven into golden spikes, giving her a fierce yet elegant appearance. Small ridges lined the sides of her face, adding to the powerful image she now embodied. So, what do you think? Asked Naruko softly, dropping the mask into the mist that swirled around the floor. Hinata hesitated, then raised her hand to gently touch her friend's face, taking in every detail. I think you're still Naruko to me. No matter the changes, I know your heart, she said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. Naruko smiled. And you're no longer the shy girl I once knew. You've become stronger, not just as a shinobi, but as someone truly remarkable. I often regret not realizing earlier how much your heart held for me. I should have seen you sooner, not focus so much on childish distractions. You're more radiant than ever, Hinata-chan. Hinata blushed deeply, startled by the sincerity and warmth of the compliment. Then it suddenly struck her, she was wearing only part of her usual uniform, her clothing having been partially removed earlier during her capture. With a gasp, she quickly tried to adjust what she could and turned away. Please don't be embarrassed, Hinata-chan. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, said Naruko, respectfully taking a small step back. What happened to my teammates? Hinata asked, shifting the conversation, trying to refocus herself. They weren't able to follow after I brought you here. I used a few harmless decoys to buy some time and distance, that's all. They should be safe, just temporarily misled. Hinata looked worried. They probably think I've been captured or worse. Lady Tsunade might even think you're a threat that needs to be stopped. That's why I need your help, said Naruko calmly. I want to return to the village, not as a fugitive, but as someone seeking peace. If you go back and speak for me, tell them I'm willing to face the village. If they're willing to accept me. Not as an enemy, but as someone who still wants to protect her home. Hinata's eyes widened in disbelief. You're still officially banished, Naruko-san. If you return without permission, it could cause serious trouble. There are many who still don't understand you. They might not accept your return so easily. That's why it has to be a condition. As far as Tsunade is concerned, the masked one who spared you isn't the same person. You can tell her you've found someone who knows about Naruko, someone who wants to help bring her back peacefully. Full pardon. A second chance. Hinata was quiet for a long moment, then whispered, I'm not very good at lying. You don't need to lie. Just believe in the truth that matters, and believe in yourself, Naruko said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Hinata leaned slightly into the gesture, comforted. When do I go back? She asked quietly, not wanting to leave just yet. I've missed you. I know, said Naruko. How about in a few days? We can talk more until then. That sounds perfect, Hinata replied, already feeling drowsy from the emotional weight of the moment. As she slowly drifted into sleep, her head resting gently against Naruko's shoulder, a soft chuckle echoed in the background. Well, it took time, but you finally got the girl of your dreams, teased a voice from within Naruko's mind. Not now, please, Naruko mentally sighed. All right, the voice responded, amused. No more jokes, for now. And with that, quiet peace settled between the two. What was that? Thought Naruko, her gaze narrowing as if daring the QB to repeat itself. I said, what an itch. I have a really bothersome itch on my back. The QB replied quickly, clearly eager to avoid further discussion, and especially the memory of Barney and the bright pink room. Sure you do, thought Naruko. I'll let it go for now since I'm with Hinata-chan, but don't push it, furball. And remember, I love you. You love me. Try anything again and I'll reintroduce you to our favorite purple dinosaur. The Kyuubi shuddered and withdrew deeper into the shadows of its cell. Naruko-chan, murmured Hinata in her sleep. Naruko smiled gently and carefully lifted her in her arms, carrying her to a more comfortable bed. Konoha, 3 days later. I can't believe this happened, said Tsunade, rereading the report handed to her by Kurenai. Despite multiple attempts, the scroll still bore faint signs of tears, smudging the ink. The returning team had come back one member short. Tsunade sensed immediately that something had gone wrong. As the report revealed, the team had pursued Hinata's trail, only to find that a masked figure had used transformed shadow clones to mislead them. Each clone carried a piece of Hinata's clothing to further confuse their efforts. What concerned Tsunade most was the implication behind this, an experienced shinobi using such tactics against someone so young and vulnerable. Now Tsunade was left with the agonizing decision: declare Hinata missing in action or potentially something worse, should the situation have escalated. Suddenly, the door burst open. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade-sama. Please come quickly, cried Shizune, breathless from running across the village. Tsunade stood instantly. What is it? It's Hinata, she's back. She's safe, Shizune said, her face alight with relief. Without another word, Tsunade rushed past her and out the door. Konoha streets, shortly after. Hinata walked back into the village with a calm confidence that surprised many. She had just returned from a mission gone wrong, captured by an infamous figure, and yet there was peace in her eyes. Naruko had made sure she had clean clothes before sending her back, knowing how quickly rumors could spread if Hinata returned in anything less. It was a gesture of kindness and protection. Hinata, Kurenai cried, rushing to embrace her former student tightly. Kurenai-sensei, I'm really okay, Hinata reassured gently. She could tell from Kurenai's searching eyes that her sensei feared something more had happened. Are you truly all right? Did he harm you? Hurt you? Kurenai asked cautiously, her concern deep. Hinata shook her head. No. He only wanted to speak with me and pass along a message for the Hokage. Kurenai frowned slightly, clearly unsettled. Let's go see the Hokage then. She paused as Tsunade arrived, appearing in front of them with urgency. I'm glad you're safe, Hinata. But we need to talk, just us, in my office. I need to know everything about what happened, Tsunade said. Hinata nodded. Yes, Hokage-sama. There's something important I need to tell you, about Naruko-chan's return. Both Tsunade and Kurenai looked surprised by the name. What does Naruko have to do with this masked individual? Asked Kurenai, puzzled. Hinata took a breath. He wants to negotiate with the village. He's offering to turn himself in, but only if Naruko's banishment is lifted. He's also asking that Naruko be granted full immunity from any past accusations and that the village offer restitution for how she was treated growing up. Because of the 9 tails. Both women stared at Hinata, shocked. Why would this hunter care so much about Naruko? Have they even met? Asked Kurenai. Hinata shook her head again. No. But he knows her story. He respects her, respects everything she's endured. He believes she deserves to come home. And in exchange for her return and justice, he's surrendering himself willingly? Asked Tsunade, searching Hinata's eyes. Yes, Hinata confirmed. Tsunade turned to Kurenai. What do you think? Could this be a trap? Kurenai lowered her voice. It's possible. But if he's serious, we should at least consider it. We'll agree to the deal, Tsunade said after a pause. But if he attempts anything suspicious, our Anbu will step in immediately. How will he even know your answer? Kurenai asked. He already does, Hinata said, pointing to a nearby wall. There, a figure with glowing red eyes briefly appeared before vanishing in a puff of smoke. That was a shadow clone, Kurenai said. Yes, Tsunade replied. But Hinata, we still need to hear everything. Please come with us. Hinata nodded. Of course, Hokage-sama. Together, they walked toward the Hokage Tower, ready to discuss the masked stranger, and the hopeful return of Naruko. Tsunade sighed as she rubbed her temples, trying to ease the headache the masked hunter had caused her with his involvement with Hinata. From what Hinata had shared, Tsunade had only a few days to have Naruko's banishment lifted with the Fire Daimyo's approval. Otherwise, she would miss the chance to capture an enemy of the elemental nations. However, What bothered the slug Sannin turned Hokage was that the masked hunter had nearly surrendered himself to the leaf, all for someone he didn't even know. Tsunade wasn't going to deny that the offer was beneficial to her, she would have accepted it in a heartbeat, but there was something about the deal that didn't sit right with her. It felt too one-sided, and her instincts told her something was off. "Did the fire daimyo get back to you, Tsunade-sama?" Shizune asked, knowing the daimyo often preferred a direct line to the Hokage to keep track of the village's affairs. "Yes. He gave the approval to lift the banishment and will be in Konoha the day the masked hunter surrenders and signs the agreement to make everything official," Tsunade replied. She knew the fire daimyo would bring a large group of samurai, and she would station Onbu around the area where the event would take place. "That's good news, but how are we supposed to contact Naruko? Will she even want to come back?" Shizune asked, aware that many people still resented Naruko for the Kyuubi incident and the subsequent struggles in the village. According to Hinata, the masked hunter will contact Naruko directly, and they've set a date to enter the village together. Together, like old friends, as if nothing had happened, Tsunade said in disbelief. She still couldn't believe it and wouldn't until she saw it for herself. "That'll be something to witness," Shizune commented. While people feared the masked hunter, seeing Naruko walk beside him would stir rumors of an alliance between them. "Yeah, but the only one happy about this is Hinata," Tsunade said, shaking her head. She couldn't believe the girl's luck, and wondered how much of it had rubbed off on Naruko before she left 3 years ago. The others are nervous. A lot happened 3 years ago, with people discovering the truth about Naruko and the Kyuubi. Then the masked hunter started killing shinobi. No one wants him in our village, but they do want Naruko back and most want to apologize for how they treated her. "Well, all except Sakura," Shizune remarked, frustrated by Sakura's continued blame on Naruko for Sasuke's departure. "I still can't understand how Sakura can blame Naruko for Sasuke," Tsunade grumbled. "Maybe we can convince the masked hunter too." "Well, never mind," Shizune said, realizing she shouldn't encourage violence, even in jest. "Seriously, Tsunade-sama, how are we going to convince Naruko to stay? It's not just for Hinata's sake, since she could always leave with Naruko if she wanted to," Shizune asked, seeing Tsunade collapse into her chair, deep in thought. "I don't know, Shizune. The councils won't be happy about it, and even with their powers reduced, they'll still want to punish Naruko for everything that happened after her banishment," Tsunade sighed, her frustration evident. "Kakashi hasn't been the same either," Shizune added, noting how depressed the man had become since the events with Sasuke. "Well, he should have been there for her," Tsunade replied sharply. "He abandoned his students and failed to protect them when they needed him. It was luck that Naruko found Jiraiya to help with her seal and teach her how to control the Kyuubi's chakra." Several days later, Naruko's perspective. Naruko grinned behind her mask as she gazed at Konoha from a distance, wondering how the villagers would react to her return. Would they be scared? Shocked? She couldn't wait to see the reactions unfold. For the grand prank to work perfectly, she would have to deceive everyone in the village until everything was official and she could execute her plan. "Shadow clone jutsu," Naruko exclaimed, summoning a copy of herself, which transformed into her current appearance: black pants, combat boots, a crimson shirt, and a black trench coat with a red fox design. The old hag was right about one thing. "We definitely look good in black and red," the shadow clone said with a smirk, and the two Naruko clones began their walk toward the entrance of Konoha. "You've certainly come a long way, kid. Not fully human anymore, but that's another story," Kyuubi commented from within Naruko's mind, amused by what was to come. Konoha, public square. Tsunade stood alongside Jiraiya, waiting for the masked hunter to arrive. The fire daimyo and his elite samurai were present, as well as Onbu hidden in the crowd, ready to act if anything went wrong. Their orders were clear: protect Naruko at all costs. "Do you think they'll show up, Hokage-sama?" the fire daimyo asked, wondering if Naruko would actually return to the village. "Naruko won't miss this. She'll come back to clear her name, but if she decides to leave afterward, I won't stop her," Tsunade replied, confident that Naruko would come back to reclaim her place. "You don't have to worry, Tsunade-sama. They're here," the fire daimyo said, pointing as Naruko and the masked hunter walked toward the platform. Naruko's mischievous smile caught the attention of everyone present. "Minato, your daughter has certainly grown," Jiraiya thought, his gaze softening as he watched Naruko, seeing so much of her father in her. As Naruko reached the platform, she bowed respectfully to the fire daimyo, then smirked at Tsunade. After some light-hearted banter between them, Tsunade reluctantly refrained from acting on her desire to punch Naruko in the arm for calling her old hag once again. Alright, here's how this will work, Tsunade began. Naruko will sign the agreement first. The Fire Daimyo and I have already added our seals to make it official. After that, the Masked Hunter will sign it, and then we'll take him into custody for interrogation. Naruko's shadow clone grinned and responded, "Let's do this, Granny," causing Tsunade to scowl in mock irritation. Jiraiya couldn't help but laugh inwardly, observing how little Naruko had changed since he last saw her. The ceremony continued, and after Naruko signed the paper, the Masked Hunter stepped forward to sign it as well, using the name Masked Hunter. Once everything was official, Tsunade called for the Anbu to take the Masked Hunter into custody, but then Naruko and her shadow clone spoke in unison. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Hokage-sama," they both said, causing a tense silence to fall over the crowd. "Naruko, what are you talking about?" Tsunade asked, confused as she glanced from Naruko to the Masked Hunter and back to the shadow clone. "Sorry, Granny, but you've been deceived, and so have you, Daimyo-sama." "Well, sort of," said Naruko, as she disappeared in a puff of smoke, revealing that she was a shadow clone, leaving just the four of them on the stage. No, it's not true," thought Tsunade, as she realized what had just happened, and it was confirmed when the Masked Hunter began undoing the tubes connected to her mask before removing it. Everyone stared wide-eyed at the sight before them, some unable to breathe, others fainting, while some shinobi sweated heavily. Tsunade looked like she might collapse from the shock. The Fire Daimyo stood frozen, as did his samurai army, terrified by the figure who had destroyed nearly all of their enemies. The rookies were stunned, with Choji even offering his bag of chips to Shikamaru, swapping it for the cigarette the lazy Nara was smoking. "You all look like you've seen a ghost. Or would you prefer the term demon?" Naruko said, dropping her mask and letting out a mighty roar that made everyone cover their ears from the intensity of the sound. "And Naruko? It can't be you," said Tsunade, looking at her goddaughter, who now appeared in this monstrous form. "What? You expected the Yondaime?" Naruko said with a demonic chuckle, then glanced over the contract she had signed about her past actions. "This cannot be," Tsunade said, horrified by the nightmare that Naruko had become, and she disliked what she saw. "What? You expected me to be someone else, Granny? You should really thank old Danzo for sending those rude Anbu after me when I left. He wanted to mold me into a weapon to overthrow you so he could become Hokage. I fell off a cliff during a battle and stumbled upon a place where I could unlock a side of myself I never knew existed," Naruko explained, her clawed finger stopping at the section of the contract that made everything sweeter. "Uzumaki Naruko is hereby fully pardoned of all past crimes against Konoha up to the point of signing this document on the specified date. But look at what you've become. What you did to the shinobi of the Leaf, and the other shinobi villages," Tsunade exclaimed, seeing that Naruko didn't seem to care, her feral smile unchanging. "Like I care what happens to the fools within the Leaf. You know as well as I do, all of those I confronted from the Leaf were all tied to the abuse I suffered as a child, and it was time they paid for their actions against me. The old man sent them away, but when they came back, they never learned their lesson. So, I vowed in secret to get my revenge. How I did it was on my terms. As for the others from various shinobi villages, I'm sorry I had to hurt Suna Nin Baki, but I owed Gekko Hayate, and I knew Gaara's sensei was responsible for that. I've already sent a letter to Gaara explaining myself and that the man I confronted was worthy of my actions," Naruko explained, with Tsunade looking at her in shock, while the Fire Daimyo stood frozen. "What about the Leaf itself? Don't you want to regain the bonds you once had with your friends or the Jounin senseis?" Jiraiya asked, having trouble believing what his young apprentice had become. Naruko turned to look at him with red eyes that made him shiver. "What about it? This place hated me the moment they learned about the fox sealed within me. As for lost bonds? Most of them are too afraid to look at me the same way as before," Naruko said, her gaze making them flinch, as if they were facing a vengeful force. "Almost all of them?" Jiraiya asked, and Naruko grinned, then turned to face the figure of Hyuga Hinata as she stepped forward to stand face to face with Naruko. "This wouldn't have been possible without Hinata-chan," said Naruko, and she kissed Hinata on the lips, with Hinata returning the gesture. The crowd was stunned into silence, unsure of how to react. Eventually, the silence was broken when Danzo and his rude Anbu appeared, surrounding them with weapons drawn. "You are under arrest for deserting the Leaf and attacking Leaf shinobi, demon brat," Danzo said, disregarding the papers Naruko had signed with the Hokage and Fire Daimyo seals. "Ah, if it isn't my old enemy, Mr. Old One-Eyed Danzo, and his merry band of root soldiers. I was wondering when I would get a chance to repay you for what you did to get me exiled. How has life treated you?" "Poorly," I imagine, since Orochimaru and Kabuto are dead, and your secret partner to take down the leaf is no more, Naruko said, grinning at the sight of Danzo's shocked face. So it wasn't just Orochimaru trying to stay hidden from the Akatsuki. No wonder I haven't heard from him recently, Danzo thought, realizing the truth. His eyes widened as Naruko's wrist blade extended, signaling she was ready for a fight. You really are foolish to try and fight me, Danzo, and with such a large group of weak shinobi. After all, I did defeat Hoshigaki Kisame and Uchiha Itachi. This is no challenge for me, Naruko said, sending a chill down Danzo's spine, and the rude Anbu hesitated. You're bluffing, Danzo said, but Naruko let out a laugh that sent shivers up everyone's spine. Do I? I have their rings, Kisame's sword Seimata, and their skulls as trophies. I would show you, but I'm sure you'd try to take them, and that would be a very bad idea, Naruko said, pulling out a shuriken disc with her left hand, daring them to try and fight her while Hinata stood in her gentle fist stance, ready to protect her. Demon abomination. Attack now. Destroy her, Danzo shouted, pointing his cane at Naruko, and the root shinobi charged forward with weapons raised. Ah, so many people attacking and wanting me gone. It must be my birthday, Naruko said as she threw the shuriken, taking down several of the root Anbu, and others were struck by her wrist blade. Hinata also joined the battle, defending Naruko with her fierce precision, while Jiraiya and Tsunade fought off the remaining root Anbu. The fire daimyo was quickly escorted to safety by his samurai. The rookies, along with their jounin senseis, watched in shock, but then something inside them snapped. They remembered how they had ignored Naruko's suffering and how she had survived on her own. Their guilt overwhelmed them, and they decided to fight to protect their long-lost friend. Soon, the rookies and their senseis were fighting Danzo's root Anbu, to everyone's surprise. Danzo couldn't believe it. He had assumed that the rookies and their senseis would hate Naruko for what she had become. But now they were all working together, determined to right their wrongs. When Danzo's forces were dwindling, he tried to escape, but Tsunade's Anbu forces blocked his path, and Naruko herself intercepted him, covered in the remnants of the battle. And Naruko, wait. Listen to me. I can help you gain power beyond your imagination. I can help you achieve your dream. Danzo begged before Naruko swiftly cut him down with her jagged-edged sword. Naruko looked at the bandaged right arm of the fallen man and felt something odd. She removed the bandages to reveal that Danzo had surgically implanted every Sharingan from the Uchiha clan. She quickly disposed of the arm with a canister of blue liquid solvent, ensuring it was completely dissolved. Turning back to face the others, Naruko noticed the still tense atmosphere. What? For Kami's sake, I'm not going to eat you, skin you, or mount your heads on my walls as trophies. I'm not Sasuke, Naruko said, rolling her eyes as the tension faded, and Hinata stepped forward to hand her the mask. Here you are, Naruko-kun, Hinata said sweetly, as Naruko put her mask back on, but not before receiving a quick kiss from Hinata. Hey! When did you two become so romantic? Ino asked, shocked by their kiss before the fight. Hinata shared that the time she spent with Naruko after her abduction allowed the two of them to truly understand one another, and learn about each other's lives during the 3 years Naruko had been away. When Kiba asked if Hinata and Naruko had become closer during that time, he quickly regretted his question when Ino, Tenten, and even Naruko herself responded by giving him a firm reminder of boundaries. Naruko placed her wrist blade near his throat, silently asking him to reconsider his words. Kiba, trying to be clever, for once, claimed that he had memory loss from the blows to his head, trying to avoid the danger of his neck getting too close to Naruko's blades. Troublesome Naruko. You are the epitome of the word, Shikamaru remarked as he saw Naruko smirking at him, suppressing the shiver that ran up his spine. I wouldn't be Uzumaki Naruko if I wasn't, Shikamaru, Naruko replied, seeing the Nara nod in agreement, knowing it was true. At the same time, Lee appeared eager to have a friendly spar with her. Actually, Naruko, your heritage was revealed shortly after your banishment. The Fire Daimyo, after receiving a lot of support from people you helped on various missions outside of Konoha, ordered that your true lineage be made public. It turns out you are the daughter of the Yondame. You're officially a Namikaze now, Jiraiya announced. This revelation caused quite a stir among the crowd, leaving many in shock and guilt, though not everyone reacted the same way. What did Minato ever see in these people anyway? Naruko thought to herself, questioning the loyalty of those around her. So I'm his daughter, huh? Well, it doesn't really matter to me, Naruko responded firmly. I'm still Naruko, and I won't act how others think I should just because of my name. I'll be who I want to be, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can find somewhere else to be. Fair enough, but could you at least consider moving back to Konoha? Jiraiya suggested. You're fully pardoned for your past actions against the Leaf, and I could teach you everything I should have when you were younger. Jiraiya had already learned a lesson, having been on the receiving end of some intense feedback from Tsunade and Hinata for not being the best godfather. Hinata also had her own experience with Tsunade, making it clear that when a woman was angry, it was best to steer clear. I suppose. I'll stay in Konoha for a time, but only temporarily, Naruko agreed. While the others were relieved, there was also a sense of sadness knowing that she wasn't planning to stay permanently. And during that time, Naruko-chan is spending time with me. Hinata thought, determined to make the most of every moment with Naruko. I need to find a way to convince Naruko to stay longer. But how? Tsunade thought, hoping her surrogate sister would make the decision to stay in the village. The challenge now was how to make Naruko see the value of staying in Konoha for good. Naruko was in the Namikaze clan estates, having been granted her rightful inheritance, despite some objections from the two councils. However, those objections were quickly silenced when her wrist blades were drawn, and her dual chakra casters were aimed in a manner that commanded respect. After that, the girl who had once been cast out from the village returned to the home that was rightfully hers for the first time in over a decade and a half since her birth. Hinata had wanted to accompany her, of course, to offer emotional support during this difficult time, but Naruko insisted she do this alone, promising to call upon her once the moment of solitude had passed. Hinata understood, knowing that this was a deeply emotional and private moment for Naruko, entering the home of her long-gone family, a place many had long forgotten. As Naruko walked through the halls of the grand estate, she noted the dust that had accumulated over the years since her father had placed blood seals to keep anyone but family from entering. In the main area, Naruko found a family portrait of her parents, undoubtedly taken shortly after their marriage, and before she had even been conceived. Many emotions stirred within Naruko as she gazed at the image of her parents. She knew her mother had died giving birth to her, and she had seen these memories thanks to the Kyuubi, who had preserved them for her to view when the time was right. From those memories, Naruko knew her mother, Kushina, would have loved her unconditionally and would have protected her from those who sought to harm her in the village. Her father, however, left Naruko with conflicting feelings. Namikaze Minato, her father, had tried to do what he thought was a noble thing, but in doing so, he made choices that had not gone as he had hoped. Naruko could not shake the bitterness she felt toward him for leaving her with little protection, despite his knowledge that things could have turned out differently. What angered her most, though, was how her godparents, who should have been there for her, abandoned their duties. Instead of helping her, they turned to gambling, drinking, and avoiding their responsibilities. Naruko had every right to feel resentment, but she knew there was nothing to be done about it now. The past was the past, and she didn't want to dwell on it any longer than she had to. Looking away from the portrait, Naruko walked towards the clan library to see what remnants of her father's legacy might be waiting for her there. Several hours later, at the Konoha Memorial Stone, Kakashi stood, staring at the large monument that bore the names of so many lost comrades, his teammates, his sensei, the Sandaime, and many others who had fallen in the line of duty. When Tsunade had summoned him to her office, she had cut straight to the point, demanding to know why he had ignored Naruko during the Chunin exams finals. His excuse? Sasuke was fighting the best and deserved to be trained by the best. It hadn't gone over well. Tsunade had placed him in the hospital for 2 weeks as punishment. When Kakashi finally returned, he learned that he had betrayed the very code he had lived by and, in doing so, betrayed one of his own students, favoring another who had turned traitor. To make matters worse, the Fire Daimyo had removed the restrictions surrounding Naruko's heritage and revealed that she was, indeed, Minato's daughter. Apparently, the Sandaime had decided to keep Naruko's identity a secret, thinking it would offer her a normal life, but in doing so, he had subjected her to a life that was anything but normal. "You were always so predictable, Kakashi," said Naruko, stepping out from the shadows and approaching him from behind. "Hello, Naruko," Kakashi replied, his voice low and filled with regret, without even turning to face her. "Lost in the past again, Kakashi? Or are you just trying to stay stuck there?" Naruko's voice carried a hint of both mockery and sorrow as she watched him stiffen, and then saw his shoulders relax. "A little bit of both, I suppose," Kakashi admitted before finally turning to face her. "How have you been since I left Konoha?" Naruko asked, her words sharp, yet filled with a quiet bitterness. "Must have been tough knowing you put all your faith into the wrong student." Kakashi winced at her words. The truth stung more than he had expected. "I know I made mistakes, but if I had known you were Minato's daughter, I would have." I would have. Kakashi's sentence was abruptly cut off as Naruko, moving faster than he could track, held a jagged-edged blade at his throat. Being the Yondame's daughter shouldn't have changed anything, she snapped. I wanted to be a shinobi of the leaf, but you, like so many others, tried to prevent me from achieving that. You ignored me, Kakashi. How does that make you feel? Does it bring you comfort to know you betrayed the Yondame's own daughter, all while favoring someone who turned their back on the village? Kakashi looked away, unable to meet her gaze. I am the only family the Yondame ever needed, Kakashi muttered, his voice tinged with regret, but also resentment. You were nothing but an accident. Naruko's expression hardened. What a shame my father isn't here to hear you say that. You're too much of a coward to speak the truth. Always running from your guilt, always clinging to the past, hoping it will shield you from the reality of your mistakes. Her voice grew colder, sharper. Do you ever feel guilty for betraying my father? For turning your back on him, on me? You're just like an Uchiha, unable to accept the past, and hurting everyone around you because of it. Kakashi's face darkened as he clenched his fists. You don't understand, Naruko. My father. He felt guilty for his choices, for saving his comrades over following a mission, he said, his voice strained. Naruko narrowed her eyes. And not once did you tell him that it was okay. You didn't have the courage to remind him that saving his comrades was the right thing to do. Just like the villagers did to me, you let him believe he was alone in his decision. Kakashi flinched at her words, but didn't respond. Naruko withdrew her sword, leaving him to reflect on his failures. As she turned to leave, Kakashi quickly drew a kunai, positioning it at her neck. You're one to talk about guilt. Your hands are stained just like mine, Kakashi growled, his voice laced with anger. I've heard the rumors, Naruko. If they're true, your kill count is higher than mine. Naruko didn't flinch, but the corner of her mouth twitched as she looked back at him. I didn't become a monster, Kakashi. I did what I had to survive. But you? You've only ever betrayed those who depended on you. Please, I've heard those rumors, Hatake, and they are far from the truth. My accomplishments are much greater than what they claim. Oh, and one more thing for your records, my so-called sensei, while my hands may have been involved in some difficult decisions. They are touched by the choices made by those who betrayed friendships, said Naruko before she disappeared in a puff of smoke, revealing that she was a shadow clone. The real Naruko stood behind Kakashi, stopping him before gently touching his shoulder. You won't get away with this, Naruko, said Kyubi, but Naruko ignored the words, feeling a deep satisfaction from her actions. She had never intended harm, but she was firm in her convictions. I'm not going to harm you, Hatake. To me, you're not even worth it. You're not someone who I consider important enough to hurt. Instead, I'll leave you to live your life as it was before our paths crossed, without any greater purpose, said Naruko, before leaving Kakashi to face his own choices, whether to continue life in a different way or seek help. Unknown location. It is as we feared. The masked hunter is the Kyubi vessel, said Pain, standing with the members of the organization. Some of them exchanged concerned glances. That means it's true that Itachi and Kisame are no longer with us because of her, said Konan, unsure of who could replace them. Indeed. And from what we've gathered, Orochimaru and his partner Kabuto have also been removed. The remaining candidates are not as capable, said Pain, reflecting on the past few months. Do we really need to focus on them for the final part of our mission? Said Sasori, knowing that obtaining the one-tailed demon would be a delicate matter if Naruko continued hunting down other members of Akatsuki. No. But the rings they wore are crucial to our plans. We need to find them, said Pain, as he watched the others nod in agreement. We will proceed with caution, focusing on the other demon vessels first, and only then turning our attention to the Kyubi vessel, said Pain as the group agreed and departed to execute their strategy. Konoha, Namikaze Estate, Master Bedroom, 2 days later. The estate was quiet, but Naruko and Hinata shared a peaceful moment together, talking about their futures. Naruko had always admired Hinata's calmness and strength. They were both looking to build a future that wasn't defined by their past battles. Hinata smiled at Naruko, feeling a sense of belonging and happiness. Naruko, if you ever decided to leave the village, would you take me with you? Naruko looked at her gently. Of course, Hinata. If that's what you want, I'd be happy to go with you, wherever you choose. Hinata's heart fluttered as she realized how much Naruko cared for her. What if we settled somewhere else? Maybe Wave Country, or even Spring Country, where people would welcome you. That sounds nice, Naruko replied thoughtfully. Spring Country. Maybe that would be a good place to start fresh. It's an interesting thought. Hinata nodded. You'd make an amazing leader anywhere, Naruko. And you would make an amazing partner, Hinata, Naruko responded softly, her voice filled with admiration. Hokage Tower, 2 days later. Tsunade sighed, clearly frustrated as she sat across from Naruko, trying to understand her decision to leave the village behind. The conversation had been going on for hours, but Naruko had made it clear that she wasn't ready to fully commit to Konoha. Please reconsider, Naruko. There are people here who care about you. Doesn't that show there's hope for the village? Tsunade asked, genuinely hoping that Naruko would see the potential for change. Naruko stood, her gaze unwavering. No, not yet. I know that Konohamaru and his friends have the potential to lead one day, but they still have a long way to go. I can't stay when I see so many barriers that haven't been addressed. Tsunade paused, realizing that Naruko's views were shaped by her experiences. So, what are your plans now? She asked, curious about what Naruko would do next. Naruko smiled, her expression calm but resolute. I'll be sticking around for now, but I won't be here forever. There are other places where I can help people, where I can be part of something greater than just a village. Defeat those who wish to harm me and my kin before they can take any further action. Once they are no longer a threat, the future of the Leaf Village will be in your hands until Konohamaru is old enough to take the mantle as Hokage, said Naruko. She didn't want Tsunade to learn about her possible visit to the Spring Country, where she planned to meet with Kazana Koyuki, the famous actress turned leader of the Shinobi Village, accompanied by Hinata. The last thing Naruko needed was for Tsunade to order Onbu squads to stop her, labeling her as a potential threat just because she left the village for a while. I still wish you would reconsider staying in Konoha permanently, Naruko. Those who care about you want you to stay, Tsunade said, hoping the sentiment would persuade her to stay and become a permanent asset to the Leaf Village. On a more personal note, Tsunade longed for the days when Naruko had been like a surrogate sibling to her, before the distance between them had grown so awkward. For the last time, the answer is no. I won't change my mind just to soothe your heart, Tsunade, Naruko said, seeing Tsunade wince, knowing how much the Hokage longed for their old bond. I understand your responsibility, but I'm aware of how you and Jiraiya neglected your duties when I was growing up. Tsunade sighed, acknowledging Naruko's words with a rueful smile. I understand. I can't blame the Hokage of Konoha for trying, she said as Naruko stood and made her way out of the room. This village has much to answer for. The Fire Daimyo has already punished the people of Konoha, but that's his way of doing things. My way is different. You know the saying, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? Well, if that's the case, the Leaf owes me much more than just a pound, Naruko said as she left, activating her cloaking technique as she prepared to pay a certain someone a visit. Training ground number 5 to 20 minutes later. Uchiha Sasuke was working hard, his emotions fueling his efforts as he relentlessly struck the training post. It wasn't Itachi he was angry with, he had made peace with his brother's death. No, his true enemy was the one who had bested him at the Valley of the End, forced him to return to Konoha, and made him face punishment at the hands of the clan heads. The one who had caused him such humiliation, Naruko. When Naruko left, Sasuke had been glad, believing she would face a light punishment. But when Jiraiya entered with a smirk on his face, Naruko's return had been imminent, and Sasuke found himself facing a new, stronger foe. He had heard the rumors of the demon who hunted down rogue shinobi, and he was intrigued. Naruko's reputation had grown to become that of a formidable hunter. I heard they sealed your bloodline, but I didn't expect them to let you back into the shinobi ranks and continue training, Naruko remarked, appearing next to Sasuke. She looked at him with a hint of amusement. Welcome back, loser. Have you grown taller? Sasuke mocked, his usual smirk returning. Is that all you've got? After everything you've been through, you're still obsessed with my height? I thought you would have become wiser, Sasuke, especially after they sealed your Sharingan. I thought you'd learn humility, but here you are, still thinking you're better than everyone else, Naruko responded, eyeing Sasuke carefully. But I guess you're still the same person who wanted to kill me just to prove yourself better than your late brother, aren't you? Sasuke's frown deepened as he clenched his fists. Shut up. I'll always be better than you, Naruko, and I'll prove it when the time comes. Naruko laughed, but it was cold and unfeeling. You think you're better than me? After all those times at the academy when teachers gave me harder questions than anyone else? You think I didn't notice that you were allowed special treatment? If I had been trained the way you were, I would have been a high-level jounin by now. You'd barely be a chonin. Sasuke's expression darkened further, the truth cutting him like a blade. He realized that Naruko had always been stronger than him, even when they were younger. "It doesn't matter," Sasuke said, his pride still intact. "You were never worthy of the power the village gave you. You'll never understand how to use it properly." "Power isn't about brute force, Sasuke," Naruko said sharply. "It's about control. I have the Kyuubi sealed inside me, and I choose not to use that power recklessly. You wouldn't understand that, because to you, power is just a way to destroy. If you ever had my strength, the consequences would be unimaginable." Sasuke shrugged dismissively, his arrogance intact. "Like I care about innocent people. I only care about myself. Everyone else is just a stepping stone." Naruko's face darkened with resolve. "That's where we're different. I may fight, but I never target the innocent. Your obsession with power is exactly why your clan was destroyed. They were as selfish as you, and look where it got them." Sasuke's anger boiled over. "You'll regret this, Naruko. When I defeat you, I'll make sure everyone knows I was the one who took you down." Naruko smirked beneath her mask. "You can try, Sasuke. But you'll never be able to beat me. I'm not the same person you once knew." Slums, the apartment. Naruko entered the rundown building that had been her home for many years, after being cast out of the orphanage at the age of 4. She had survived by scavenging and eventually earned a small apartment, though the landlord had been a cruel, bitter old man. Naruko approached the apartment door and knocked, waiting for the landlord to answer. When the old man saw her, he immediately tried to close the door in her face, but Naruko wasn't having it. With a forceful motion, she broke the door open and stepped inside, confronting the man who had once mistreated her. He sputtered words, perhaps apologies, perhaps insults, but Naruko didn't care. The past was done, and she wasn't interested in making amends with someone who had never cared for her. As she unleashed her fury, she made sure that the man would remember her visit. The next moment, Naruko set a series of explosive tags to trigger one another, causing the entire building to collapse in a controlled demolition. As the dust settled, Naruko walked away without regret, marking her territory in Konoha. She had made her point. Omake, Jiraiya's early attempts at cloaking. Jiraiya fumed at the success of his late student's daughter's cloaking technique, which allowed Naruko to become invisible at will. He had hoped to use it for more noble purposes. Like peeping at women in the hot springs. But Naruko wouldn't give him the technique, so now Jiraiya was determined to figure it out on his own, despite the comedic nature of his intentions. Though his mission was rather misguided, one could hardly blame him for his persistence in trying to master Naruko's cloaking skills. The Toad Sage would surely learn his lesson one way or another. "That's it, Naruko. Relax and enjoy the water. Oh Kami, look at that one. Maybe I should. Oh no. Uh-oh, they saw me," thought Jiraiya, as he peered through a small hole in the fence he was holding, with his back pressed against the rock wall near the hot springs. It seems it wasn't mentioned that all the women in the hot springs were female shinobi from the IT department, being trained by Mitarashi Anko herself, who was also present in the hot springs. Well, now you know. And let's just say they weren't too happy about the famed self-proclaimed super pervert spying on them. "Get him!" they all shouted as they approached Jiraiya, making him panic and wish he could vanish. As we said before, it's hard not to feel some sympathy for Jiraiya in this moment. In conclusion, I hope you found this content both enjoyable and informative. It's always a pleasure to bring you fresh perspectives and share engaging material that resonates with your interests. I truly appreciate the time you took to watch, and your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you saw, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more exciting updates and future content. Your feedback in the comments is also invaluable, as it helps me improve and ensure I'm delivering what you love. Thank you again for being part of the journey. Best regards. 6 Path Weeb.